The suffocating heat of Miami seemed to suck the air from the lungs of anyone who dared to walk through the busy downtown streets that December afternoon. Leonardo Williams adjusted the knot of his Italian tie and watched through the window of his Mercedes-Benz S-Class, the pedestrians dragging themselves along the sidewalks like desperate ants. At 33, he had achieved everything a man could desire. A business empire that extended throughout the United States, mansions in Beverly Hills, and the Hamptons, luxury cars, and the respect of those who mattered in the business world. His intense blue eyes reflected the calculating coldness that had taken him to the top. Dark brown hair impeccably combed back, fair skin that had never known the sun of manual labor, and a posture that screamed power from miles away. Leonardo Williams wasn't just rich, he was the living definition of ruthless success. But nothing could have prepared him for what he was about to witness. The driver slowed down. Near the Capitol Grill, one of the most expensive and exclusive establishments in the city, where Leonardo had a business meeting in 15 minutes. That's when his eyes caught a scene that would make his world crumble like a house of cards. An elderly man, bent by the weight of years and misery, was rummaging through garbage bags behind the restaurant. His clothes were in tatters, his sparse white hair disheveled, and his trembling hands desperately searched for food scraps among the waste. Robert Miller, 72 years old, had skin weathered by the relentless sun and years of farm work, deep and sad eyes that told stories of a lifetime of struggle and abandonment. "Stop the car!" Leonardo ordered the driver, unable to look away from the scene. What happened next was etched in his memory like a hot iron brand. The restaurant manager, a fat and arrogant man dressed in an ill-fitting suit, came out the back door accompanied by 2 employees. "Get out of here, you disgusting beggar!" shouted the manager, giving Robert a violent push that made him stumble and almost fall. "You're scaring away our customers. This filth doesn't belong in a fine place like this." Robert tried to explain with a weak and trembling voice. "Please, sir, I just wanted a little food. I haven't eaten anything since yesterday." "Food?" laughed the manager cruelly. "You think you deserve to eat the same food our customers pay $1,000 to taste? Go back to the gutter where you came from." One of the employees kicked the garbage bag Robert was holding, scattering the remains on the ground. The elderly man knelt down, trying to collect the pieces of wet bread and food scraps with trembling hands, while silent tears rolled down his wrinkled face. "Look at this shame," said the other employee. "People like this should be banned from walking around the city. It's an insult to decent people." Leonardo felt something strange happen in his chest, a sharp pain, as if someone had stuck a knife between his ribs. At that moment, all his business coldness, all his calculating hardness, melted like ice under the scorching sun. He saw in Robert not a beggar, but a human being stripped of his dignity in the cruelest possible way. Without thinking twice, Leonardo got out of the car and walked toward the group with firm and determined steps. His imposing presence made everyone instantly fall silent. "What's happening here?" he asked with a voice that cut through the air like a razor. The manager, immediately recognizing the power emanating from that well-dressed man, completely changed his tone. "Oh, sir, don't worry about this. It's just a beggar who was bothering our customers. We're already handling the situation." Leonardo looked at Robert, who remained kneeling on the ground, collecting the food scraps with a silent dignity that broke his heart. At that moment, he made a decision that would change his life forever. "Sir," said Leonardo, addressing Robert with a gentleness that surprised everyone. "Are you hungry?" Robert raised his sad eyes and met Leonardo's intense blue gaze. It had been so long since anyone addressed him with respect that he almost didn't know how to respond. "Yes, sir," he murmured with a choked voice. "It's been 2 days since I've eaten anything proper." Leonardo felt anger growing inside him like a storm. He turned to the manager with murderous coldness. "I want you to prepare the best dish you have in this restaurant. Now." "But, sir," the manager stammered, confused. "This man can't pay." "I'll pay," Leonardo cut him off, and I want a reserved table with all the ceremony you offer to your most important customers." The silence that followed was deafening. The employees looked at each other, not knowing what to do, while some passers-by stopped to observe the unusual scene. Robert tried to get up, but his weak legs trembled. Leonardo immediately approached and helped him carefully. "It's not necessary, sir," said Robert with a choked voice. "You've already done too much. I don't deserve such kindness." "Every human being deserves dignity," Leonardo replied, and saying those words, he felt as if he were discovering a truth he had forgotten long ago. But Robert shook his head with a humility that touched Leonardo's heart even deeper. "Sir, your kindness is more than I deserve, but I can't accept it. I have no home to return to afterward, no way to repay such generosity. If you really want to help me, take me to my daughter's house. It's the only place where I can find a little peace. Have you ever witnessed an injustice that completely changed your view of life? Tell us in the comments which city you're watching from, and leave a like if you believe everyone deserves dignity. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what happens next in this emotional story." The trip to the homestead neighborhood on the outskirts of Miami was one of the longest in Leonardo's life, not because of the distance, but because of the emotional weight he carried. Sitting next to Robert in the back seat of the Mercedes, he observed the tired face of the elderly man and felt a growing uneasiness inside him. The smell of poverty and abandonment emanating from the old man didn't bother him. What disturbed him was the silent dignity with which Robert endured his condition. "Sir," said Robert with a weak voice, interrupting the silence, "I don't even know how to thank you for what you're doing for me. It's been so long since someone treated me like a human being." Leonardo felt a lump in his throat. All his life he had stepped on people to get where he was, had made merciless decisions in the name of profit, had built his empire on coldness and calculation. And there was a man who had nothing, but who radiated a humanity he had lost long ago. "What's your name, sir?" Leonardo asked. "Robert Miller, sir. I worked my whole life on a farm in rural Alabama. I planted corn, beans, took care of cattle. It was a hard life, but honest, until the drought came and took everything away. I lost the land, lost the house, lost my dignity." The old man paused, looking out the window at the simple houses that began to appear as they moved away from the city center. "My wife, Mary, died 5 years ago. Cancer. I spent everything I had trying to save her, sold even the last animals that remained. When she passed away, I was alone in the world. Or almost alone." "Almost?" Leonardo asked. A sad but love-filled smile lit up Robert's wrinkled face. "I have a daughter, sir, Sarah. She's the most precious thing God gave me in this life. A girl of pure gold, with a heart bigger than the world. When I have nowhere to go, when hunger gets too much, I go to her. And you know what this saint does? She receives me like I'm a king." Leonardo felt a strange curiosity growing inside him. There was something in the way Robert spoke about his daughter that intrigued him deeply. "She gives me a bath, gives me warm food, lets me sleep in her bed while she sleeps on the living room sofa. She never complains, never makes me feel like a burden. On the contrary, she treats me as if my presence were a gift." "And why don't you live with her?" Leonardo asked. Robert sighed deeply, and Leonardo could see tears forming in the tired eyes of the elderly man. "Because I know she barely has enough for herself, sir. Sarah works at a clothing store downtown, earns minimum wage, and lives in a rented little house that barely has 2 rooms. She always receives me, but I know the burden I am in her life. That's why I prefer to live on the streets. At least this way she can live her life without worrying about me." Leonardo couldn't respond. He had never imagined that this type of love could exist, a love so pure and selfless that it was willing to sacrifice its own comfort for the good of another. The Mercedes stopped in front of a simple house of exposed bricks with a small porch and a rusty iron gate. The blue paint on the walls was peeling, and the small front garden was lovingly cared for, full of simple but well-maintained flowers. "It's here, sir," said Robert, And for the first time since Leonardo had met him, there was genuine joy in his voice. Before they could even get out of the car, the door of the house opened and a young woman appeared on the porch. Leonardo felt the air escape from his lungs when he saw her for the first time. Sarah Miller, at 26, was one of the most beautiful women he had ever seen, but it wasn't conventional or artificial beauty. It was honest, real beauty that emanated from the inside out. She had fair skin, slightly golden from the sun, natural blonde hair that shone like ripe wheat, always tied in a simple bun that left some loose strands framing her delicate face. But it was her eyes that really captured Leonardo. Light blue eyes like the morning sky, which mixed infinite tenderness with premature tiredness, the result of carrying responsibilities too heavy for her age. She wore a simple navy blue dress, already faded from so many washes, and worn flip-flops. There was no makeup, no jewelry, no artifices, and even so, or perhaps because of this, she radiated a beauty that left Leonardo speechless. "Dad!" exclaimed Sarah, running toward the car with a smile that lit up the entire street. Leonardo watched, fascinated, as she opened the car door and helped Robert out with infinite delicacy, as if he were made of crystal. There was no hurry, no impatience, just pure and unconditional love. "My dear daughter," said Robert, and for the first time Leonardo saw true happiness in the elderly man's eyes. Sarah hugged her father tightly, not caring about the smell, not caring about the dirty clothes, not caring about anything other than the fact that he was there, safe. "I missed you, Dad," she murmured, caressing Robert's sparse white hair. "I prepared country-style beans and southern fried chicken, just the way you like it." It was then that Sarah noticed Leonardo's presence. Her blue eyes met his, and for a moment the world seemed to stop. There was a depth in that look that Leonardo had never experienced. It wasn't desire, it wasn't material interest, it was something much purer and more frightening. "Good afternoon," said Sarah with a sweet but cautious voice. "Are you a friend of my father's?" Leonardo got out of the car, feeling strangely nervous. Never in his life had he felt intimidated by a woman, but there was something about Sarah that completely disarmed him. "My name is Leonardo," he said, extending his hand. "I found your father today and wanted to help him." Sarah looked at the extended hand for a moment before shaking it. Her skin was rough, marked by work, but warm and honest. The touch sent an electric current through Leonardo's arm. "Sarah," she replied simply, "thank you very much for taking care of my father. Please come in. It's not much, but what we have, we share." With joy, Leonardo followed Sarah and Robert into the small house. The interior was even simpler than he had imagined. A tiny living room with a worn sofa, a small old television, and some photos on the wall, most showing Sarah as a child, with a man and woman he supposed were her parents in better times. The house was clean and organized, every object in its place. Fresh flowers in a simple vase on a coffee table made of wooden crates painted white. "Sit down, Dad," said Sarah, guiding Robert to the sofa. "I'll get a basin with water for you to freshen up." Leonardo watched, hypnotized, as Sarah disappeared into the kitchen and returned carrying a basin of warm water, a clean towel, and soap. She knelt on the floor in front of her father and began washing his face with a delicacy that made Leonardo's heart tighten. "There, that's better," Sarah said softly, cleaning the dried tears from Robert's cheeks. "You look more handsome than the soap opera heartthrob." Robert laughed, the first genuine laugh Leonardo had heard from him. "My daughter always exaggerates," said the elderly man, but his eyes shone with happiness. Sarah continued caring for her father with gentle and careful movements, washing his hands, cleaning his hair, adjusting his clothes. Leonardo, sitting in a simple wooden chair, watched the scene in complete silence, feeling something deep and inexplicable moving inside his chest. In that young woman who possessed practically nothing material, he saw a richness that all his money could never buy. He saw unconditional love, genuine dignity, a beauty of soul that transformed that simple house into a palace. And for the first time in his life, Leonardo Williams felt small. While Sarah finished caring for her father, Leonardo couldn't help but observe every detail of that house that, despite its simplicity, breathed love. The walls were decorated with photographs of happy moments. Sarah as a child smiling next to her parents, Robert and a woman who must have been his wife in better days, moments of a simple but meaningful life. "Would you like some coffee?" asked Sarah, addressing Leonardo with those blue eyes that seemed to see directly into his soul. "Yes, thank you," he replied, more to have an excuse to stay longer than because he really wanted coffee. Sarah disappeared into the kitchen, and Leonardo could hear the sound of dishes being handled carefully. Robert, now clean and more comfortable, looked at him with curiosity. "Mr. Leonardo," said the elderly man, "may I ask an indiscreet question?" "Of course. Why did you do what you did for me today? A man like you, successful, important, why did you care about a worthless old man like me?" Leonardo thought for a moment before answering. The truth was that he himself didn't know for sure. Something had broken inside him when he saw Robert being humiliated, something that had been asleep for a long time. "Because every human being has value," he finally replied, "and because I saw in your dignity something I had lost long ago." Robert nodded wisely. "You speak like someone who knows pain, even having everything money can buy." Before Leonardo could respond, Sarah returned carrying a tray with 3 cups of coffee and a plate with homemade bread still warm. The aroma filled the small living room, and Leonardo realized he was hungrier than he had imagined. "Sorry for not having anything more sophisticated to offer," said Sarah, serving the coffee with graceful movements. "But this bread was made with love this morning." Leonardo took the cup, a simple white porcelain mug with small hand-painted flowers, and tasted the coffee. It was strong, flavorful, made with care and love. Very different from the expensive coffees he drank in business meetings, but infinitely better. "It's delicious," he said sincerely. Sarah smiled, and Leonardo felt his heart skip a beat. When she smiled, her whole face lit up, transforming her natural beauty into something almost divine. "Sarah," said Leonardo, trying to keep his voice steady, "may I ask what you do for work?" "I work at a women's clothing store downtown," she replied, sitting next to her father on the sofa. "It's not much, but it's honest work. I can pay the rent for this little house and put food on the table. God always provides." "And your dreams?" asked Leonardo, genuinely curious. "We all have dreams. What are yours?" Sarah looked at her own hands for a moment, as if deciding whether or not to open her heart to this man she had just met. "I dreamed of studying elementary education," she finally said, with a soft but melancholy-laden voice. "I always wanted to be a teacher for young children. I think they deserve all the love and care in the world. But when Mom got sick, I had to abandon my studies to take care of her and work. After she passed away, I had to take care of Dad." She paused, looking at Robert with infinite affection. "I don't regret anything. Family is the most important thing in the world. Money we can get, a diploma we can earn later, but family is forever." Leonardo felt something break inside his chest. Here was a woman who had sacrificed her own dreams for others, who faced life with silent courage and dignity he had never found in all his sophisticated social circles. "And you?" asked Sarah, interrupting his thoughts. "What's your story?" Leonardo hesitated. How could he explain his life of privilege to someone who had struggled so much? "Just to survive? I'm a businessman," he said simply. "I work with investments, business, things that frankly now seem much less important than they seemed this morning." "Every honest occupation has its value," said Sarah wisely. "If you can help people through your work, then you're fulfilling your purpose." "Have you always been like this?" asked Leonardo, fascinated by the maturity and wisdom of this young woman. "Like what?" "Strong, brave, with this ability to see good in everything." Sarah laughed softly. I think life taught me that we can choose to be bitter or grateful. I choose to be grateful every day. When I wake up in the morning, I'm thankful for having a roof, for having health, for having my father alive, for having work. It might seem like little to some people, but for me it's everything. Leonardo looked around the simple house, saw the love stamped in every corner, felt the peace that emanated from that place, and realized that Sarah was right. There was a richness here that all his money could never buy. The sun was beginning to set, tinting the small living room with golden tones. Sarah got up to turn on a lamp, and Leonardo realized he didn't want to leave. For the first time in years, he felt at home. "Mr. Leonardo," said Robert, "we've already abused your kindness too much. You have an important life to take care of." "Actually," said Leonardo, surprising himself with his own words, "I'm not in any hurry. If you'll allow me, I'd like to stay. For dinner. It's been a long time since I felt so at peace." Sarah looked at him with those penetrating blue eyes, as if she could see beyond the surface, directly into his soul. For a moment, Leonardo was certain she knew exactly who he was. Not the successful businessman, but the lonely man hiding behind power and money. "It would be a pleasure to have you at our table," she finally said, "but only if you don't mind our simple food." "It would be an honor," Leonardo replied, and for the first time in years, his words were completely true. While Sarah went to the kitchen to prepare dinner, Leonardo stayed talking with Robert about his life in the countryside, about the difficult times, about the pain of losing his wife. But even talking about sadness, there was a serenity in the old man that Leonardo envied. It was as if Robert had found a peace that transcended material circumstances. The aroma coming from the kitchen was incredible. Country-style beans seasoned with love. Southern fried chicken that made his mouth water, golden cornbread that reminded Leonardo of a childhood that seemed to belong to another life. When Sarah returned to set the table, Leonardo insisted on helping. Together, they arranged the simple wooden table with mismatched but clean plates, simple but shining silverware, and common glass cups that reflected the lamplight like precious crystals. During dinner, Leonardo discovered that Sarah had a subtle and intelligent sense of humor, that she knew how to listen with genuine interest, that she asked insightful questions about his life without ever seeming invasive. She treated his business stories with the same respectful interest with which she would listen to anyone, without flattery, without material interest, just with the natural courtesy of someone who had been raised with solid values. "Sarah," said Leonardo when they finished eating, "may I ask a personal question?" "Of course. You never married, never had boyfriends?" Sarah lowered her eyes, and for the first time that night, Leonardo saw genuine sadness on her face. "I had a boyfriend," she said softly. "Michael. We dated for 3 years. We thought about getting married, building a family. But when Mom got sick, and I had to dedicate all my time to caring for her, he said he couldn't wait. He said he wanted a woman who could dedicate herself totally to him, not someone who had to take care of parents." Leonardo felt anger growing inside him. How could someone abandon a woman like Sarah precisely when she most needed support? "I'm sorry," he said sincerely. "Don't be sorry," Sarah replied, raising her eyes and meeting his gaze. "If he couldn't understand that family is a priority, then he wasn't the right man for me. God has better plans. Have you ever had to choose between your dreams and your family? How was that experience?" Comment below which city you're watching from and leave a like if you believe true love is built on solid values. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to follow this story that's just beginning. In the days that followed that first meeting, Leonardo found himself thinking about Sarah in a way he had never experienced. It wasn't just physical attraction, although she was, without doubt, one of the most beautiful women he had ever met. It was something much deeper and disturbing. He felt attracted to the person she was, to the way she lived, to the simple wisdom that emanated from every word she spoke. For a whole week, Leonardo tried to focus on his business, on his important meetings, on his million-dollar decisions. But he constantly found himself remembering Sarah's smile, the gentle way she had cared for her father, the peace he had felt in that simple house. On the following Friday, he couldn't resist anymore. He bought a basket of fresh fruit and some quality groceries, nothing too flashy that might seem like charity, just a polite way to repay the hospitality, and returned to Sarah's house. When he knocked on the door, it was Robert who answered. The elderly man looked better, cleaner, with different clothes, still simple, but dignified. "Mr. Leonardo!" exclaimed Robert with genuine joy. "What a wonderful surprise! Sarah, come see who's here." Sarah appeared at the door, drying her hands on a dish towel, wearing a light pink dress that highlighted the color of her eyes. When she saw him, her face lit up with that smile that made Leonardo's heart race. "How good to see you." "Again," she said with sincere joy. "Please come in. I was just preparing a cornbread." Leonardo entered and handed the basket to Sarah, who received it with gratitude, but without exaggeration, as if it were natural to receive gifts from friends. "You didn't need to," she said, "but thank you very much. These fruits look delicious." While Sarah returned to the kitchen to continue preparing the cornbread, Leonardo sat in the living room with Robert. The elderly man seemed different. There was more life in his eyes, more energy in his movements. "How have you been, Mr. Robert?" Leonardo asked. "Better, sir, much better. You know, after that day something changed inside me. Your kindness, my daughter's love, made me remember that I still have value, that I can still contribute to the world." "You always had value," said Leonardo. "Sometimes we just need someone to remind us of that." Robert nodded. "And you, how have you been? Forgive the boldness of an old man, but I can see there's something different about you too." Leonardo was surprised by the elderly man's perception. "Different how? When I met you, you had sad eyes, even being successful. Today your eyes have a different light. It's because of my daughter, isn't it?" Leonardo felt the blood rise to his face. "Was it that obvious?" "Your daughter is an extraordinary woman," Leonardo admitted. "She is my pride," said Robert with love, "but she's also my concern. Sarah deserves to be happy, Mr. Leonardo. She deserves to find someone who truly loves her, who understands the treasure she is." Before Leonardo could respond, Sarah returned with a tray containing slices of still warm cornbread and fresh coffee. "I hope you like it," she said, serving them with that natural gracefulness that enchanted Leonardo. The cornbread was delicious, moist, flavorful, made with care, and simple but quality ingredients. Leonardo realized that Sarah had a natural talent for cooking, as well as for caring for people. "Sarah," said Leonardo, "may I invite you to go out with me tomorrow? I'd like to show some places in the city to both of you." Sarah looked at her father and then at Leonardo, her blue eyes reflecting surprise and a hint of caution. "That's very kind of you," she said, "but we don't want to bother." "It wouldn't be a bother at all," Leonardo interrupted. "Actually, it would be a pleasure. It's been a while since I've had such pleasant company to explore the city where I live." Robert gave his daughter a loving nudge. "Accept it, daughter. It's good to get out of this routine a little, and Mr. Leonardo is good company." Sarah smiled, and Leonardo felt his heart speed up. "All right, then, but with one condition. We go to simple places. I don't feel comfortable in very sophisticated environments." "Deal," said Leonardo, already mentally planning a route that would be special but accessible. "I'll pick you up at 10 in the morning." The following Saturday, Leonardo arrived punctually, driving a simpler car, his BMW X3, which, although still luxurious, wasn't as flashy as the Mercedes. He wore casual clothes, dark jeans, light blue shirt, and simple shoes. He wanted Sarah to feel comfortable. When Sarah opened the door, Leonardo almost lost his breath. She wore a simple white dress that reached her knees, with small blue flowers, her hair loose falling in golden waves over her shoulders. She was even more beautiful than he remembered. "Good morning," she said with that smile, that illuminated any environment. "Dad, Mr. Leonardo is here." Robert appeared wearing a clean shirt and pants that, although old, were well ironed. Sarah had clearly made an effort for her father to present himself well. The first destination was Bayside Marketplace in Miami. Leonardo loved observing Sarah's reaction to everything. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity as they walked among the stalls of exotic fruits, artisanal cheeses, and colorful spices. She asked intelligent questions to the vendors, tasted the offered samples with genuine interest, and treated everyone with the same respectful cordiality. "I'd never tasted these fruits," said Sarah, savoring a piece of dragon fruit. "They're delicious." Leonardo bought a selection of fresh fruits, some special cheeses and artisanal breads, insisting it be his gift to them. Sarah tried to protest, but he was gently inflexible. "It's a fair trade," he said. "You gave me something much more valuable last week. You made me feel at home." Next, they went to Bayfront Park. It was a beautiful sunny day, and Leonardo rented a wheelchair for Robert, who was getting tired easily. They walked slowly along the shaded paths, sat by the bay to watch the boats, and Leonardo had the opportunity to talk more intimately with Sarah while Robert dozed in the wheelchair under the shade of a palm tree. "May I ask a personal question?" said Leonardo while they watched children playing at the nearby playground. "Of course. Do you never feel resentful? Never feel angry for having to carry so many responsibilities alone?" Sarah thought for a moment before answering. "Sometimes I feel tired," she admitted. "Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and wonder how I'm going to pay all the bills, how I'm going to take care of Dad when he needs more help. But angry? No. Everything I have, everything I am, I owe to my parents. They gave me love, education, values. If now it's my turn to care, I do it with gratitude. And your own dreams, your desires." Sarah looked at the children playing, and Leonardo saw a shadow of melancholy pass over her face. "I wonder what it would be like to have my own family," she said softly. "To have children, watch them grow, teach them the values I learned. But I learned that life has its own timing. If God wants this to happen, it will happen at the right time." Leonardo felt an intense desire to take her hand, to promise he would make all her dreams come true. But he knew it would be premature, that he needed to win her trust slowly. "And you?" asked Sarah, interrupting his thoughts. "You never married, never wanted to start a family?" Leonardo hesitated. How to explain that he had dedicated his entire life to business, that he had had superficial relationships with women interested only in his money, that he had never found someone who made him want to be a better person? "I never found the right person," he finally said. "I always thought I knew what I wanted in a woman, but now I realize I was completely wrong." "Wrong how?" "I valued superficial things," Leonardo admitted. "Physical beauty, social status, sophistication. Now I understand that what really matters is character, kindness, the ability to truly love." Sarah looked at him with those penetrating blue eyes. "Sometimes we need to go through certain experiences to understand what's really worthwhile. The important thing is that it's not too late when we discover it." For lunch, Leonardo took them to a simple but good barbecue restaurant in Little Havana. Nothing too sophisticated, but with tasty food and a welcoming atmosphere. Robert was animated, telling stories from his youth in the countryside, and Sarah laughed at her father's jokes with genuine joy. During the meal, Leonardo discovered more about Sarah's personality. She was intelligent, had well-formed opinions on various subjects, read a lot despite financial limitations, and dreamed of a better future not just for herself, but for all people going through difficulties. "Sometimes I think that if I had the means," said Sarah, "I'd like to open a community center, a place where single mothers could leave their children while they work, where abandoned elderly could find company, where people who go hungry could have a decent meal." Leonardo felt his heart warm. Here was a woman who, having so little, dreamed of helping others. How many people did he know who had a lot and only thought about accumulating more? In the late afternoon, when he took them back home, Robert fell asleep in the back seat of the car. Sarah and Leonardo talked in low voices during the entire trip, and he found himself wishing the journey would never end. When they arrived at the house, Robert woke up and insisted that Leonardo come in for coffee. "It was a wonderful day," said the elderly man. "I haven't felt so happy in years. Thank you for giving us this, Mr. Leonardo." "The pleasure was all mine," Leonardo replied, and it was absolutely true. While Sarah prepared coffee, Robert pulled Leonardo aside. "Mr. Leonardo, may I speak frankly with you?" "Of course. I see how you look at my daughter, and I see how she looks at you when she thinks nobody's watching. You like each other." Leonardo felt his face heat up. "Mr. Robert—" "You don't need to explain," the elderly man interrupted. "I just want you to know one thing. Sarah is the purest and truest person I know. If you really care about her, prove it. Not with money or expensive gifts, but with constancy, with respect, with true love. She deserves that." "She deserves much more than I can offer," said Leonardo sincerely. "You're wrong," Robert replied. "Sarah doesn't need much to be happy. She needs someone who truly loves her, who respects her, who understands the treasure she is, and I think you can be that person." When Sarah returned with coffee, she found the two men in deep conversation. There was something in the air she couldn't identify, a strange but not unpleasant tension. "What were you talking about?" she asked, serving the coffee. "About life," Robert replied with a mysterious smile. "About how sometimes the best things come when we least expect them." Leonardo stayed until later that night, talking about everything and nothing, feeling more relaxed and happy than he had felt in years. When he finally got up to leave, Sarah accompanied him to the door. "Thank you for today," she said softly. "It was very special for both of us." "For me, too," Leonardo replied. May I come back next week?" Sarah smiled, and in that smile Leonardo saw something that made his heart race. There was affection there, genuine interest, the beginning of something that could be much deeper. "That would be great," she said. "You're always welcome here." Driving back to his empty mansion in Coral Gables, Leonardo reflected on the changes happening inside him. For the first time in his life, he felt he had found something, someone, worth more than all his business and material achievements. Sarah Miller was changing his life, and he hadn't even realized yet how deep this transformation would be. 3 months had passed since that first meeting, and Leonardo had become a constant presence in Sarah and Robert's lives. Every week he appeared with some excuse, bringing groceries, offering outings, or simply coming to talk. Gradually, those visits became the most anticipated moment of the week for all three. Sarah had gotten used to Leonardo's presence in a way that surprised her. At first, she felt intimidated by his evident wealth and social position, but gradually she discovered that behind the business facade was a genuinely good man who treated her with respect and affection she had never experienced. Leonardo, for his part, was completely in love, not just with Sarah's beauty, but with everything she represented: kindness, strength, dignity, unconditional love. He had begun to question all his priorities, all the values that had guided his life until then. On a rainy Wednesday in March, Leonardo was in his office on Biscayne Boulevard when he received a call that would change everything. "Mr. Williams," said his secretary through the intercom, "there's a gentleman here who says it's very urgent, a Mr. Robert Miller." Leonardo's heart raced. Robert would never appear at his office unless it was an emergency. He had him brought in immediately. When Robert entered the luxurious office, Leonardo was shocked by his appearance. The elderly man was pale, trembling, with red eyes from crying so much. "Mr. Robert, what happened?" Leonardo immediately stood up, guiding the elderly man to an armchair. "Mr. Leonardo," said Robert with a choked voice, "I needed to come here personally. I couldn't let more time pass without telling you the truth." "What truth? What's happening?" Robert took a deep breath as if gathering courage. I went to the doctor today, sir. For weeks I've been feeling chest pains, extreme fatigue. Sarah insisted I seek medical help." Leonardo felt a chill in his stomach. "And what did the doctor say?" "Lung cancer, sir. Advanced stage. The doctor said that I don't have much time." The world seemed to collapse around Leonardo. He had grown fond of Robert like the father he never had, and the idea of losing him was devastating. But his main concern was something else. Does Sarah know? Not yet, said Robert, wiping his eyes with a handkerchief. And that's why I came here. Mr. Leonardo, I know you love my daughter. I saw it in your eyes from the first day, and I know she's falling in love with you too. Leonardo didn't deny it. There was no point in hiding anymore. I love your daughter more than my own life, he admitted, but I never had the courage to declare my feelings. Our social difference— Nonsense, Robert interrupted. Love doesn't know social differences. But Mr. Leonardo, I have little time, and I need to make sure your daughter will be well when I'm gone. What can I do? Robert looked at him intensely. Marry her, sir. Not just because I'm dying, but because you love each other. Give her the family she's always dreamed of, the children she so desires, the security she deserves. Leonardo felt his eyes water. Mr. Robert, I would do anything for Sarah. But what if she doesn't want to? What if she thinks I'm taking advantage of her vulnerability? Then it's up to you to prove that your feelings are true, said Robert. But Mr. Leonardo, there's something else I need to tell you, something that might change everything. What? Robert hesitated, looking out the office window as if gathering courage. You know, I worked on a farm my whole life. But what I didn't tell you is that 30 years ago I worked on a farm that belonged to the Williams family. Leonardo felt his blood freeze. My family? Yes, sir. Your father, Dr. Edward Williams, was the owner. I was the farm foreman, responsible for the workers and production. It was a large, prosperous farm, and I had been there for more than 10 years. Leonardo didn't understand where this was going. His father had never mentioned an employee named Robert Miller. Continue, he said. There was a period of very serious financial crisis. The farm was facing difficulties, and some suspicious business was happening. I discovered that the general administrator was embezzling money, falsifying documents, stealing from the Williams family. And what did you do? I went directly to your father, told him everything I knew, handed over all the evidence I had managed to gather. Your father was furious, fired the administrator immediately, and managed to recover most of the stolen money. Leonardo still didn't understand the connection. That's impressive. My father never told me this story, because what happened afterward was terrible, said Robert, and his voice trembled. The administrator I denounced was a powerful man with dangerous connections. He found out I had turned him in and decided to get revenge. A heavy silence fell over the office. One night, armed men invaded my house on the farm. They burned everything, destroyed our small plantation, killed our animals, and they said that if I didn't leave the region immediately, they would kill my family. Leonardo felt his heart racing, sensing there was more to come. I had to flee with my wife and Sarah, who was only a 2-year-old child at the time. We lost everything, sir. Our house, our work, our security, everything for doing the right thing. My God, Leonardo murmured. Your father tried to help us. He offered money, offered another property, offered protection. But the men had made it clear that if we remained anywhere connected to the Williams family, our lives would be in danger. We had no choice but to disappear. Leonardo was beginning to understand the weight of that revelation. That's why you came to Miami? We came with nothing, sir. We had to start over from scratch in a big city where nobody knew us. I worked as a construction worker, as a janitor, in any job that appeared. My wife washed clothes for others. Sarah grew up in a much more difficult life than she should have had. Mr. Robert, I'm so sorry. If I had known— You're not to blame for anything, said Robert. But now do you understand why I came to tell you this? Why I need to make sure Sarah will be well? Leonardo nodded, beginning to understand the dimension of what he was hearing. You saved my family from financial ruin and ended up being punished for it. And now, mysteriously, fate has brought us back. The son of the man I tried to help fell in love with the daughter who suffered the consequences of my loyalty. Don't you think this is more than coincidence? Leonardo felt his eyes water. Everything made sense now. Robert's natural dignity, Sarah's strength and solid values, the feeling that he had known these people much longer than he actually had. There's still one thing, said Robert, taking a yellowed envelope from his pocket. I kept this for all these years. It's a letter your father wrote me before we fled. I never opened it, but I think now is the time." With trembling hands, Robert opened the envelope and removed a sheet of letterhead paper. He read it silently first, and then, with a choked voice, read aloud, "My dear Robert, I know circumstances force you to leave, and my heart is heavy for not being able to protect you adequately. You saved my family and my business with your honesty and courage, and I am eternally in debt to you. If there's ever a way to repay your loyalty, even if only to your descendants, I promise I will do it. You are a man of honor, and men like you are rare in this world. May God protect you and bless your family wherever you go. With eternal gratitude, Edward Williams." The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of rain hitting the window. Leonardo was too emotional to speak. "Now do you understand, Mr. Leonardo?" said Robert. "It's not coincidence that we met. It's the fulfillment of a promise. Your father couldn't repay my loyalty, but maybe you can." "How?" asked Leonardo with a hoarse voice. "By loving my daughter, by protecting her, by giving her the life she deserves, by fulfilling the promise your father made." Leonardo stood up and went to the window, observing the city that stretched below. His mind was in turmoil, processing all the information, all the implications of that revelation. "Mr. Robert," he finally said, turning to the elderly man, "I promise you that I will take care of Sarah as if she were my own life. But first, I need to tell her all this. She has the right to know the truth." "I agree," said Robert, "but Mr. Leonardo, also tell her about your love. Don't let her feel obligated to anything because of this story. She needs to know that your feelings are genuine." Leonardo nodded. "I'll tell her everything. Tonight. And Mr. Robert, about your illness. I haven't told Sarah yet. I was waiting to resolve this matter first. But now that you know everything, I can face that conversation. She'll need a lot of support. She'll have all the support in the world," Leonardo promised. "Mine and from all the best doctors we can find. We won't give up without a fight." Robert smiled, and for the first time since he had arrived, there was peace in his eyes. "Thank you, Mr. Leonardo. Now I can face whatever comes with tranquility, knowing my daughter will be in good hands." When Robert left the office, Leonardo cancelled all his meetings for the day. He had a very important conversation ahead, a conversation that would change their lives forever. That night, while driving to Sarah's house, Leonardo mentally rehearsed the words he would use. How to explain that fate had intertwined their families in such a complex and profound way. How to declare his love without her thinking he was being moved by guilt or obligation. When he arrived at the simple house in Homestead, his hands were trembling. Inside, Sarah and Robert were waiting for him for another apparently ordinary night. But Leonardo knew that nothing would be ordinary after that conversation. The truth was about to come to light, and with it the possibility of true love or the destruction of everything they had built together. Do you believe that destiny exists? That certain people come into our lives for a greater reason? Tell us in the comments which city you're watching from, and leave a like if you believe some connections go beyond chance. Sarah immediately noticed that something was different when Leonardo arrived that night. He seemed nervous, apprehensive, very different from the confident man she had met. Robert was also strange. Since he had returned from the doctor that morning, he had been quiet and thoughtful. "Good evening," said Sarah, opening the door with her usual smile, though a bit worried. "Is everything okay? You both seem different." Leonardo and Robert exchanged a look loaded with meaning. "Sarah," said Leonardo, with a slightly trembling voice, "we need to talk. Your father and I have something very important to tell you." Sarah's heart accelerated. In her experience, conversations that began like this never brought good news. "Sit down," she said, trying to stay calm. "I'll prepare some coffee." "No, daughter," said Robert softly. "Sit with us. Coffee can wait." Sarah sat in the small armchair facing the sofa where the two men settled. Her hands trembled slightly as she waited for someone to break the silence. "Sarah," Robert began, First, I want you to know that you are the most precious thing in my life. Everything I did, all the sacrifices I made were out of love for you and your mother. Dad, you're scaring me, said Sarah with a tense voice. I need to tell a story, daughter. A story that began long before you were born, and that explains how we got here. Robert then told the entire story. His years working on the Williams family farm, the discovery of corruption, the denunciation that saved the family's business, the cruel revenge that forced them to flee and start over from scratch in Miami. Sarah listened in silence, her blue eyes widening as she understood the implications of that revelation. From time to time she looked at Leonardo, trying to process the fact that he was the son of the man her father had saved years ago. So you already knew each other?" she asked when Robert finished telling the story. "Not directly," Leonardo replied. "I was very young at the time. My father never told me the details of this story. I only found out today, when your father came to my office." "But why did he go to your office?" asked Sarah, confused. That's when Robert took a deep breath and dropped the second bomb. "Because I have cancer, daughter. The doctor said it's serious, that I don't have much time." Sarah's world collapsed. She felt as if she had been punched in the stomach, as if the air had been sucked from her lungs. For a moment she couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't process what she had just heard. "No," she murmured, shaking her head. "No, this can't be happening. Not after everything we've already been through." Tears began to roll down her face as the reality of the situation set in. Leonardo, without thinking, stood up and knelt in front of her, taking her hands in his. "Sarah, we're going to fight," he said with a firm voice. "We're going to find the best doctors, the best treatments. We won't give up." "Daughter," said Robert, also approaching, "that's why I needed to tell the truth about our story. I want you to understand that Mr. Leonardo isn't a stranger who appeared by chance in our lives. Our families have been connected for decades." Sarah looked at Leonardo through her tears, and for the first time she saw something different in his eyes. There was pain there, but also something deeper, more intense. "Leonardo," she said with a choked voice, "why do you really come here every week? Why do you care so much about us?" Leonardo knew it was time for the truth. There was no more running away or postponing. "Because I fell in love with you, Sarah, deeply, completely, and irrevocably. Since the first day I saw you caring for your father with so much love and dignity, I knew I had found the woman I wanted to spend the rest of my life with." Sarah felt her heart beating so hard she was sure the two men could hear it. But we're from such different worlds," she stammered. "We're not," said Leonardo with conviction. "We were raised in different circumstances, but our values, our hearts, are the same. You taught me what really matters in life. You taught me that true love has nothing to do with money or social status." Robert watched the scene with a sad but hopeful smile. Even facing his own mortality, he felt peace seeing that his daughter had the chance to be truly happy. "Sarah," said Leonardo, still holding her hands, "I know it's a lot to process at once. Your father's illness, our family history, my declaration of love. I don't expect an answer now. I just hope you'll give me a chance to prove that my feelings are true." Sarah looked at her father, who nodded encouragingly, and then returned her gaze to Leonardo. In those intense blue eyes she saw sincerity, vulnerability, a love that went far beyond words. "Leonardo," she said softly, "may I be honest with you? Please. I fell in love with you too. I tried to fight against these feelings because I thought we were incompatible, that you could never seriously be interested in someone like me. But every night I found myself dreaming about the possibility that you felt the same as I did." Leonardo felt his heart almost stop beating. He had waited so long to hear those words. "So, you'll give me a chance?" he asked. Sarah looked again at Robert, who had tears in his eyes. "Daughter," said the elderly man, "you love each other. Don't waste this gift fighting against destiny. Life is very short, and true love is very rare." Sarah stood up, pulling Leonardo with her. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, two hearts that finally allowed themselves to feel completely. "Yes," said Sarah, her voice firm despite the tears. "Yes, I want this chance. I want to fight for our love." Leonardo pulled her into an embrace that was, at the same time, the end of a long wait and the beginning of a new life. When their lips met in the first kiss, it was as if all the pieces of a complex puzzle finally fit into the right place. In the months that followed, Leonardo kept his promise to fight for Robert's life. He took him to the best oncologists in the country, paid for experimental treatments, ensured he had all possible comfort during the battle against cancer. Sarah never left her father's side, and Leonardo never left Sarah's side. The treatment was difficult and painful, but moments of hope mixed with small victories. Robert responded better than doctors expected, gaining precious months of quality life alongside his daughter and the man who had become like a son to him. During this period, the relationship between Sarah and Leonardo deepened naturally and solidly. He proposed to her on a simple afternoon, sitting on the porch of the house where it all began, without pomp or elaborate ceremony. Just a simple ring and the promise of eternal love. "Sarah Miller," said Leonardo that afternoon, kneeling on the small porch where so many important conversations had taken place. "Will you marry me? Not because our families have a history, not out of obligation or guilt, but because I love you more than anything in this world and want to build a life by your side." Sarah, with tears of happiness in her eyes, answered without hesitation, "Yes, Leonardo, 1,000 times, yes." The wedding was held 6 months later in a simple ceremony at the neighborhood church where Sarah had grown up. Robert, although visibly more fragile, walked his daughter down the aisle, radiant with pride and happiness. "Take good care of her," he whispered in Leonardo's ear before handing over Sarah's hand. "With my life," Leonardo promised. The reception was on the very street where Sarah lived, with neighbors who had watched her grow up, with simple food made with love, with music that came from borrowed sound equipment. For Sarah and Leonardo, it was the most beautiful celebration they could imagine. 2 months after the wedding, Leonardo surprised Sarah with a project he had been developing in secret. He took her to a plot of land in downtown Miami that he had bought and completely renovated. "What is this?" asked Sarah, confused, looking at the modern but welcoming building. "Do you remember your dream?" said Leonardo, smiling, "of opening a community center?" Sarah looked at the building with growing incredulity. There was a sign at the entrance, "Mary and Robert Miller Community Center." "Leonardo," she murmured, unable to believe it. "It's yours, Sarah. Daycare for working mothers, community dining hall, activities for the elderly, literacy classes, everything you dreamed of doing. And the best part, your father will manage the dining hall." Sarah collapsed in tears. It was more than she had dreamed, more than she thought possible. Leonardo hugged her while she sobbed with emotion. "How did you know?" "Exactly what I wanted," she asked. "Because I pay attention to all your dreams," he replied, "and because I want to spend my whole life making them come true." The community center quickly became the beating heart of the community. Robert, reinvigorated by the purpose of helping other people, managed the dining hall with passion and dedication. People experiencing homelessness found there not just a meal, but dignity and respect. Sarah fulfilled her dream of working with children, directing the daycare and teaching with the love and patience that had always characterized her personality. Leonardo frequently appeared to help, discovering a satisfaction in doing social work that he had never experienced in his business. "You know," said Sarah one night, as they walked hand in hand through the streets of the neighborhood that was now also Leonardo's neighborhood, "sometimes I think all this is too good a dream to be real." "It's real," Leonardo replied, stopping to look at her. "And it's just the beginning. We have a whole life ahead to build together." A year and a half after the wedding, Sarah discovered she was pregnant. The news came at a bittersweet moment. While a new life was forming, Robert's health was beginning to decline again. "Grandpa," said Sarah, holding her father's hand on an afternoon when he was particularly weak, "you're going to meet your grandson or granddaughter. We don't know yet." Robert smiled with deep happiness. God is good, my daughter. He lets me see you fulfilled, married to a man who truly loves you, and now he'll bless me with a grandchild before calling me. Don't talk like that, Dad, said Sarah, although she knew he was right. Daughter, don't be afraid. I lived a full life. I saw you grow and become an extraordinary woman. I saw you fall in love and build something beautiful together. Now I'm going to leave knowing you're protected and loved. I couldn't ask for more than that. Robert lived long enough to hold his grandson in his arms. Edward, a name chosen in honor of Leonardo's father, was born on a sunny September morning, with his mother's blue eyes and his father's determined chin. He's going to be a good man, said Robert, holding the baby with trembling but firm hands. I can feel it. He'll have his mother's heart and his father's strength. 3 weeks later, Robert Miller passed away peacefully in his sleep, with a serene smile on his face. His funeral was a celebration of a life well lived, with hundreds of people he had helped at the community center paying their last respects. He was a man of honor until the end, said Leonardo in the speech he gave at the packed church. He taught me that true wealth isn't measured in money, but in the number of lives we touch with love. Robert Miller touched all our lives, and his legacy will continue to live in every person he helped, in every smile he caused, in every heart he warmed. 2 years later, Sarah and Leonardo were sitting on the porch of their new house, a simple but comfortable residence they built in the same neighborhood where it all began, watching little Edward take his first steps in the garden. "Do you regret anything?" asked Sarah, caressing her belly where their second child was growing. "Nothing," Leonardo replied without hesitation. "Every moment of pain, every challenge we faced, brought us here, brought me to you. Sometimes I still find it surreal that that terrible day at the restaurant was the beginning of all." "This," said Sarah. "It wasn't terrible," Leonardo corrected. "It was the day my real life began, the day I met true love." The Mary and Robert Miller Community Center continued to prosper, now under the joint direction of Sarah and Leonardo. They had expanded services, created professional training programs, and established partnerships with other organizations to maximize community impact. Leonardo had completely restructured his business, focusing on socially responsible investments and dedicating a significant percentage of his profits to social assistance programs. He discovered that doing good was not only more rewarding, but also more profitable in the long term. "Daddy," said little Edward one afternoon, pulling Leonardo's shirt, "why is that man eating from the trash?" They were downtown, and Edward had noticed a homeless person looking for food in the dumpsters, a scene that painfully echoed the first meeting between Leonardo and Robert. Leonardo knelt beside his son. "Because sometimes people go through very difficult times, son, but you know what we can do?" "What?" "We can help. Shall we invite him to have lunch at our community center?" Edward nodded vigorously, and together they approached the man, offering him not just a meal, but dignity and respect. That night, while putting Edward to bed, Sarah and Leonardo reflected on how their lives had changed. "Do you think my father was right?" asked Sarah. "That destiny brought us back to fulfill a promise?" Leonardo pulled her closer. "I think your father was a wise man, but even if it were just coincidence, what matters is that we chose to build something beautiful together. We chose love over fear, generosity over selfishness, unity over separation. And we'll continue choosing that every day," said Sarah, sealing the promise with a kiss. Outside, the city continued its frantic pace, full of people struggling, dreaming, hoping. But inside that simple house, 3 hearts, soon to be 4, beat. In perfect harmony, living proof that true love can transform any life, heal any pain, and create miracles where once there was only desolation. The story of Leonardo and Sarah wasn't just about 2 people who fell in love. It was about redemption, about second chances, about love's ability to transform not just the lovers, but everyone around them. It was about honoring the past by building a better future. It was about discovering that true wealth isn't in what we possess, but in what we offer to the world. And so, In a small house in Homestead, Love wrote another happy ending, not the fairy tale kind of happy ending, but the real kind, earned with tears and laughter, challenges and victories, loss and renewal, the kind of happy ending worth living every day of your life. 1 year later, the October morning sun painted golden the windows of the Mary and Robert Miller Community Center when Sarah arrived, carrying 3-month-old Hope in her arms, while Edward, now 3 years old, ran ahead of her, excited for another day at the place he considered his second home. "Mummy, can I help Miss Rosa in the kitchen today?" asked Edward, stopping in front of the main door and looking at his mother with those bright blue eyes that were a perfect mixture of his parents. "You can, my love," Sarah replied, smiling at her son's enthusiasm. "But first, let's see if Miss Rosa isn't too busy, okay?" 1 year had passed since Robert departed, and although the longing still tightened Sarah's heart at unexpected moments, she had learned to celebrate his memory through the work they developed at the center that bore his name. What had begun as a timid dream had transformed into a true institution in the community, serving more than 300 families per week. Upon entering the building, Sarah was greeted by the familiar aroma of fresh coffee and homemade bread that always perfumed the environment in the early morning hours. Rosa, a 58-year-old lady who had become Sarah's right hand in managing the community kitchen, waved cheerfully from the dining hall door. "Good morning, Sarah. Good morning, Edward," called Rosa with her warm voice. "And little Princess Hope? How did the most beautiful baby in the neighborhood sleep?" "She slept well, thank God," Sarah replied, approaching so Rosa could admire her daughter. "And how are things here today?" "Quiet movement in the morning, but this afternoon we'll have a lot of work. Winter clothing donations arrived from Leonardo's in company, and we have the daycare mothers meeting at 3 o'clock. Sarah nodded, already mentally organizing her day's schedule. Since Hope's birth, she had learned to balance her time even better between motherhood and social work, always with Leonardo's unconditional support, who had become not just a dedicated husband, but a true partner in all the center's projects. "Where is Daddy working today?" asked Edward, who had inherited not only the natural curiosity of his age, but also an early interest in the activities he saw his parents developing. "Daddy went to visit some companies to get more partnerships for the center," Sarah explained. "But he'll arrive at lunchtime to eat with us." Leonardo had completely transformed his way of doing business in the last year. What had begun as a personal change, motivated by his love for Sarah and Robert's influence, had become a true life mission. He had created a new division in his company, focused exclusively on social investments and in partnerships with community organizations. The results surprised even the most skeptical shareholders. The company had not only maintained its profitability, but had gained a reputation that attracted the best talents and most conscious clients. While settling Hope in the small nursery they had set up in a room adjacent to her office, Sarah remembered how dramatically her life had changed in the last 2 years. From a young woman who struggled to keep up with bills in a rented house, she had become not only the wife of a successful businessman, but a respected community leader and a fulfilled mother. The transformation, however, hadn't been just material. Sarah felt she had grown emotionally and spiritually in ways she had never imagined possible. The pain of losing her father, although still present, had transformed into a motivating force that propelled her to honor his memory through service to others. Around 10 in the morning, Sarah was reviewing weekly reports when she heard a commotion coming from the dining hall. Raised voices, some crying, others laughing. Worried, she picked up Hope and went to investigate. In the dining hall, she found a scene that deeply moved her. Mrs. Garcia, a 67-year-old lady who had been frequenting the center for months, was hugging a younger man, apparently her son, while other community people surrounded them, clapping and congratulating. "What happened?" asked Sarah, approaching Rosa. "It's Miguel, Mrs. Garcia's son," Rosa explained, with teary eyes. He had been unemployed for 2 years, with depression, almost homeless. His mother came here every day, ate little so she could take food to him. Remember you suggested he participate in the professional training course we organized last month? Sarah vaguely remembered having talked with Mrs. Garcia about her son and insisting that she bring him to learn about the center's programs. Well then, Rosa continued, he not only completed the course, but got a job at a logistics company. He started yesterday and came here to bring his first week's salary to his mother. Sarah felt her heart warm. Stories like this repeated constantly at the center, and each one reinforced her certainty that they were on the right path. She approached Mrs. Garcia and Miguel. "What wonderful news," said Sarah, hugging both. "I'm so happy for you." "Mrs. Sarah," said Miguel, a man of approximately 30 years old, with still somewhat shy but radiant eyes of gratitude, "I don't know how to—" "Thank you. If you hadn't insisted with my mother, if you hadn't created this course, I was lost, thinking I was worthless." "You always had value, Miguel," Sarah replied with the simple wisdom that characterized her way of dealing with people. "Sometimes we just need an opportunity and someone who believes in us." "Now I want to give back," said Miguel with determination. "I want to be a volunteer here in my spare time, help other men who are going through what I went through." Sarah smiled. That's exactly how the center worked, creating a support network where people who had been helped returned to help others, creating a virtuous cycle of solidarity and transformation. Around noon, Leonardo arrived as promised, coming directly from a meeting with executives from a large supermarket chain that had become interested in establishing a partnership for regular donation of foods close to expiration. "How did the negotiations go?" asked Sarah, while Leonardo greeted Edward with a warm hug and gave Hope a loving kiss. "Better than I expected," Leonardo replied, still impressed with the meeting's success. "They not only agreed to regular donations, but want to finance the expansion of our community garden program. And more, they want to use our partnership as a model to replicate in other communities in the city." Sarah felt a mixture of joy and admiration for her husband. Leonardo had proven to be not just a skilled businessman, but a natural negotiator when it came to social causes. His ability to present social projects as advantageous investments for companies had been fundamental for the center's sustainable growth. "Daddy, are you going to have lunch with us in the dining hall?" asked Edward, pulling his father's hand. "Of course, champion," Leonardo replied. "By the way, Rosa told me you've been helping organize the plates. Is that true?" Edward nodded proudly. "I help put the forks and spoons on the tables. And I help carry the bread too." Leonardo exchanged an emotional look with Sarah. Seeing their son growing up with solid values of solidarity and service was one of the greatest satisfactions of their lives. During lunch in the community dining hall, a tradition they had established of eating at least 3 times a week together with the people served by the center, Sarah observed Leonardo interacting naturally with people of all ages and social conditions. It was hard to believe that 2 years ago he was a cold and distant businessman, focused only on profits and power. "Mr. Leonardo," said Mr. Garcia, a 74-year-old gentleman who frequented the center daily, "my granddaughter, who's studying business administration, really wants to meet you. She's studying about companies that do social work and wants to interview you for a school project." "It would be a pleasure to talk with her," Leonardo replied sincerely. "Ask her to schedule with me through Sarah. Actually, if she wants, she can intern with us. We always need talented young people who want to learn about social business." After lunch, while Leonardo returned to his business meetings and Edward napped in the center's daycare, Sarah dedicated herself to one of her favorite activities: home visits to the most needy families in the community. Accompanied by Hope and Sandra, a volunteer social worker who had recently joined the team, Sarah first headed to Mrs. Johnson's house, a 71-year-old lady who had lost her husband 6 months ago and was facing difficulties maintaining herself alone. Mrs. Johnson's house was even simpler than Sarah's old house. 2 tiny rooms in a narrow alley, but impeccably clean and organized. The lady received them with the contained joy of someone who doesn't usually receive visits. "Mrs. Sarah, what a good surprise!" exclaimed Mrs. Johnson, inviting them in. "And the beautiful little baby! How big she's gotten!" "How have you been, Mrs. Johnson?" asked Sarah, sitting in the simple chair the lady offered. "Oh, child, some days better, others worse," Mrs. Johnson replied with the honesty typical of her generation. "The loneliness is hard, you know. 50 years married to James, and now this empty house." Sarah noticed that besides the emotional issue, there were practical needs. The almost empty refrigerator, the fact that Mrs. Johnson was visibly thinner than during the last visit. "Have you been having lunch at the centre?" Sarah asked gently. "Oh, child, it's far for these old legs. And I'm also embarrassed. There are so many younger people who need it more." "Mrs. Johnson," said Sarah with affection, "you raised 5 children, worked your whole life, took care of your sick husband for years. You deserve all the care in the world now. And besides, your presence at the centre is important. Other people like talking with you, hearing your stories." After talking about the possibility of organising transportation so Mrs. Johnson could frequent the centre more regularly, Sarah and Sandra headed to the next. Visit the family of Joanna, a 23-year-old single mother with 2 small daughters. Joanna worked as a house cleaner but was facing difficulties finding regular work because she had no one to leave her daughters with. Her situation had come to Sarah's attention through a neighbour who frequented the centre. "Joanna!" called Sarah, knocking on the door of the small ground-floor apartment in an old building. The door opened, revealing a young woman with a tired appearance, but who lit up when she saw Sarah. "Mrs. Sarah, I wasn't expecting your visit," said Joanna, a bit uncomfortable with the simplicity of her house. "We were passing nearby and wanted to know how you're doing," said Sarah naturally. "Are these your daughters?" 2 small girls, one approximately 4 years old, and another 2, peeked timidly from behind their mother's legs. "Yes, they're my princesses, Anna and Isabella," said Joanna with pride, despite the difficult circumstances. During the conversation, Sarah discovered that Joanna had lost the steady job she had at a cleaning company precisely because she couldn't find schedules compatible with caring for her daughters. The children's father offered no support, and she had no close family in the city. "Joanna," said Sarah thoughtfully, "have you thought about enrolling the girls in our daycare? It's free and operates from 7 in the morning to 6 in the evening." "I heard about it, but—" Joanna hesitated. "But what?" "I thought there wouldn't be spots, that it would be too complicated." "Nothing complicated," Sarah assured. "Tomorrow you can bring the girls to see the daycare. If they like it and you feel safe, they can start Monday, and then you can look for work with more peace of mind." Joanna began to cry, not from sadness, but from relief and gratitude. "I was so desperate," she confessed, "thinking I'd never get out of this situation." "You will," said Sarah with conviction, "and when you do, you'll also be able to help other mothers who are going through what you're going through now." On the way back to the centre, Sandra commented on how Sarah dealt with people. "It's impressive how you manage to make people feel valued, not like objects of charity." "It's because I've been on the other side," Sarah replied simply. "I know how difficult it is to accept help when you have pride and dignity. That's why I always try to show it's not charity, it's community. We all need each other at different times in life." Back at the centre, Sarah found unusual excitement. Several people were gathered in the courtyard, and Leonardo was in the middle of them, apparently explaining something important. "What's happening? What's happening?" asked Sarah, approaching with hope in her arms. "Good news," said Leonardo with a radiant smile. "Remember that proposal we submitted to the state government to expand our model to other regions of the city?" Sarah nodded. For months they had prepared a detailed project about how to replicate the centre's model in other needy communities. "It was approved," Leonardo announced. "Not just approved, they want to do a pilot with 5 community centres over the next 2 years, all based on our model." The crowd that had gathered exploded in applause and shouts of joy. Sarah felt her legs weaken with emotion. This meant that hundreds, maybe thousands of other families would have access to the same services that had transformed their community. "But this is wonderful!" exclaimed Sarah. "How? Are we going to manage everything?" "That's the most interesting part," said Leonardo. "They want us to train community leaders from each region to manage their own centers. We'll be mentors, not administrators. Each community will adapt the model to its own needs." That night at home, after putting the children to bed, Sarah and Leonardo talked about the implications of this expansion. Sitting on the porch of their simple but comfortable house, watching the stars that were visible even with the urban lighting of the suburbs, they reflected on the journey that had brought them there. "Sometimes I still can't believe all this started with that terrible scene at the restaurant," said Sarah, resting her head on Leonardo's shoulder. "For me, that wasn't a terrible scene," Leonardo replied, caressing his wife's hair. "It was the moment my real life began. The moment I discovered who I really wanted to be." "And who did you want to be?" "A man worthy of a woman like you's love. A father his children could admire. Someone who made a difference in people's lives, not just in business." Sarah lifted her head to look into her husband's eyes. "You became all that and much more. My father would be so proud to see the man you've become. I feel his presence with us every day," said Leonardo, "in the decisions we make, in the values we're teaching the children, in the way we treat people at the center. Your father may have departed, but his legacy lives on." "Do you think he knew?" asked Sarah. "When he introduced us that first day, do you think he already imagined we'd get here?" Leonardo thought for a moment. "I think your father was wiser than any of us realized at the time. I think he saw something in both of us that we didn't see ourselves yet, and I think he orchestrated our meeting with the wisdom of someone who knew he had little time to ensure your happiness." A gentle breeze swayed the bedroom window curtains, and they could hear Edward's peaceful breathing and the small sounds Hope made while sleeping. "Leonardo," said Sarah softly, "I want you to know that even if we had to go back to that little two-room house, even if we lost everything we've achieved materially, I would be equally happy, because the true wealth of our life isn't in what we possess, but in the love we share and the lives we manage to touch." "I know," Leonardo replied, "and that's why our love is so strong. It wasn't built on convenience or interest, but on true values, and that's why it will last forever." The following month, news arrived that moved the entire community. The work developed at the Mary and Robert Miller Community Center had caught the attention of an international human rights organization, which decided to grant the project recognition as an exemplary initiative for social transformation. The award ceremony would be held in Washington, D.C., with the presence of government authorities and representatives from non-governmental organizations from across the country. Sarah initially hesitated to accept the invitation. She didn't feel comfortable with formalities and official speeches. "You need to go," Leonardo insisted. "Not for us, but because our story can inspire other people to make a difference in their own communities." "I don't know how to make important speeches," Sarah protested. "You speak from the heart every day to people at the center. That's all you need to do there too." And so, on a sunny November morning, Sarah found herself in the auditorium of a luxury hotel in Washington, D.C., holding an elegant trophy while hundreds of people applauded. Leonardo was in the front row, holding Hope with Edward on his lap, both radiant with pride. "When I started this work," said Sarah into the microphone, overcoming her initial shyness, "I wasn't thinking about awards or recognition. I was just thinking about honoring my father's memory. A simple man who taught me that true wealth lies in the ability to help others." Her voice gained strength as she continued. "But today I understand that this award isn't mine. It belongs to every person who found dignity in our center. It belongs to every child who now has a safe place to grow. It belongs to every elderly person who found company and purpose. It belongs to every family who discovered they're not alone in the world." The audience was visibly moved. When Sarah told the story of how it all began, with her father being humiliated for looking for food in the trash, and the unexpected kindness of a stranger who would become her husband, several people were crying. What we learned is that social transformation doesn't happen with great heroic gestures, but with small acts of love and respect repeated every day. Every smile offered, every hand extended, every word of encouragement has the power to change a life, and transformed lives transform communities. At the end of the speech, the ovation was thunderous and lasting. Several people approached Sarah after the ceremony, asking for advice on how to implement similar projects in their own cities. On the flight back to Miami, while Edward slept between them and Hope nursed peacefully, Sarah and Leonardo talked about the meaning of that recognition. "You know what impressed me most?" said Sarah. "The number of people who approached saying they wanted to do something similar, as if they were just waiting for an example, for proof that it's possible." "That's what our work represents now," Leonardo replied. "Not just a community center, but a demonstration that every person can make a difference, regardless of their social condition or available resources." "Sometimes I think about what my father would say if he could see all this," said Sarah, looking out the airplane window. "I think he would say you just continued the work he started long ago," Leonardo replied. "When he denounced corruption at the farm, when he cared for your mother during her illness, when he raised you with so much love despite the difficulties. He was always a social transformer. You just expanded the reach of the transformation." 2 weeks later, back to the center's routine, Sarah received an unexpected visit. It was Miguel, Mrs. Garcia's son, who had gotten a job after participating in the professional training course. "Mrs. Sarah," he said, with an envelope in his hands, "I came to bring something for you." "What is it, Miguel?" "It's my first savings," he said, extending the envelope. "It's not much, but I want to donate to the center. I want other men like me to have the same opportunity I had." Sarah was moved. The envelope contained $300, probably a significant amount for someone who had just left unemployment. "Miguel, this isn't necessary." "Yes, it is, Mrs. Sarah. I needed to do this. Not just for the money, but for what it represents. I want to be part of this chain of good. I want my daughter, when she grows up, to know that her father didn't just receive help, but also helped others." "Your daughter?" asked Sarah, surprised. Miguel smiled. "My girlfriend is pregnant. We're getting married next month. And you know what the girl's name will be? Hope, like your daughter, because it was here that I found hope again." That afternoon, Sarah told Leonardo about Miguel's visit while they watched Edward playing in the small playground they had installed at the center, and Hope slept peacefully in the stroller beside them. "It's incredible how good multiplies," said Leonardo. "One person helps another, who helps another, and so on." "It's like my father always said," Sarah replied. "A good deed is never lost. It always comes back multiplied." While they talked, several people arrived for the afternoon service. Sarah observed the movement with satisfaction. Mothers leaving their children at daycare, elderly people arriving for community lunch, young people heading to training courses, entire families participating in educational activities. "Leonardo," said Sarah softly, "do you regret anything? Leaving your traditional businessman life to get involved with all this?" Leonardo looked at her with that smile that still made Sarah's heart race. "The only thing I regret is taking so long to discover what really matters in life, but maybe it was necessary to go through everything I went through to be ready for this love, for this mission. And if we had met before, in different circumstances, I don't know if I would have been able to see your inner beauty like I see today. Maybe I needed to go through all that loneliness, all that coldness, to understand the value of what you represent." That night, after putting the children to bed, Sarah and Leonardo sat at the small desk in the house to review the community center's expansion plans. There was a lot of work ahead, selecting and training community leaders, adapting programs to different regional realities, establishing local partnerships in each new location. "Sometimes I get scared of the responsibility," Sarah confessed. "What if we can't maintain the quality of work? What if we can't adequately transmit the values we consider important?" "Then we'll learn from mistakes and improve," Leonardo replied pragmatically. "The important thing is that we're trying, and that each attempt, even imperfect, can change lives. My father said that God doesn't choose the capable, he enables the chosen," said Sarah. "I think that's what's happening to us." "Your father was indeed a wise man," Leonardo agreed, "and I think he knew that you two," he looked at the crib where Hope slept, "would continue his legacy in ways he couldn't even imagine." As the year came to an end, Sarah took stock of everything that had happened since her father's death. The pain of loss had transformed into motivation to honor his memory. The center's work had expanded beyond her most optimistic dreams. Her family had grown with Hope's arrival, and her relationship with Leonardo had deepened through shared challenges and dreams realized together. On New Year's Eve, the entire community served by the center gathered for a celebration in the main courtyard. There was music, food made collectively, games for children, and much gratitude in the air. "Everyone," said Sarah, asking for attention to make an informal toast, "this year that's ending was very special for all of us. We saw this place grow. We saw families transform. We saw dreams come true. But most importantly, we saw that when we unite with love and common purpose, we can create miracles." "For next year," shouted Mr. Garcia, raising his soda cup, "more miracles." "More miracles," everyone responded in chorus, including Edward, who repeated the words without completely understanding their meaning, but feeling the contagious joy of the moment. When the fireworks began to light up the sky at midnight, Sarah was in Leonardo's arms, with Hope sleeping peacefully in her arms, and Edward standing on a chair beside them, amazed by the colorful lights. "A year ago, did you imagine we'd be here today?" asked Leonardo in Sarah's ear. "Not even in my wildest dreams," she replied. "But you know what moves me most? Knowing we're just at the beginning, that we have a whole life ahead to continue building all this, and that our children will grow up seeing that it's possible to make a difference in the world." Leonardo added, "Like my father made a difference in our lives, even without knowing," said Sarah, looking at the stars shining between the fireworks. "Dad, if you're watching us, know that we kept our promise, and that we'll continue keeping it every day of our lives." A gentle breeze swayed Sarah's hair, and for a moment she had the sensation that Robert was there, smiling proudly at the family he had helped form and the legacy that continued growing through the love he had taught his daughter. When the celebration ended and everyone went home, Sarah and Leonardo stayed a few minutes alone at the center, organizing and cleaning. It was a ritual they had developed, always leaving the place ready to receive people again the next day. "Sarah," said Leonardo, stopping from putting away chairs to look at his wife, "thank you. Thank you for what? For teaching me what true love is, for showing me there's a way of living that's worthwhile, for giving me a family that's my greatest treasure, for transforming me into a better person than I thought I could be." Sarah approached and kissed him softly. "Thank you for having the courage to change, for choosing love instead of fear, for deciding that my father deserved dignity on that terrible day that was, actually, the first day of our life together." Leaving the center hand in hand, walking through the quiet streets of the community that was now truly home to both, Sarah and Leonardo knew they had built something rare and precious. A love based on solid values, a family united by greater purposes, and a life mission that gave meaning to each day. The year that was beginning would bring new challenges and new opportunities, but they would face them as they had learned to face everything, together, with faith and with the certainty that true love has the power to transform not just two lives, but the entire world around them. In the weeks that followed the new year, Sarah and Leonardo began implementing the expansion plans approved by the state government. The first step was selecting the community leaders who would be trained to manage the new centers. The selection process took place at the Mary and Robert Miller Community Center itself, and Sarah was impressed by the quality of candidates. They were people of different ages, backgrounds, and experiences, but all united by the genuine desire to make a difference in their communities. Among those selected was Joanna, the young single mother Sarah had visited months ago. After getting a stable job thanks to the center's daycare, Joanna had stood out as a natural leader, organizing support groups for other single mothers and developing creative initiatives for fundraising. "Mrs. Sarah," said Joanna during one of the training sessions, "when you visited me that day, I was at rock bottom. I thought I'd never be able to give a decent life to my daughters. Today, not only did I achieve that, but I can help other mothers achieve it too." "And your daughters, how are they?" asked Sarah, remembering the two shy girls who hid behind their mother's legs. "Transformed. Anna is reading at 5 years old, and Isabella is talking too much." Joanna laughed. "But you know what makes me proudest? They already know that when someone needs help, we help. Last week, Anna gave her snack to a classmate who had forgotten his." Sarah felt her heart warm. Seeing children growing up with values of solidarity from a young age was one of the greatest satisfactions of the work they developed. The community leaders' training lasted 2 intensive months. Sarah and Leonardo, along with the team they had formed, taught everything from practical aspects of administration, financial management, volunteer organization, business partnerships, to the philosophical principles that guided the work: respect for human dignity, community empowerment, social sustainability. During one of the sessions, one of the participants, a retired teacher named Professor Johnson, made an observation that deeply marked Sarah. "Do you know what's the difference between charity and social transformation? Charity feeds a person for a day. Social transformation teaches the person to fish, gives them the fishing rod, teaches where the best rivers are, and then empowers them to teach others to fish too." "Exactly," Sarah agreed. "Our goal was never to create dependence, but autonomy. We want every person who passes through the center to leave stronger and more capable than when they arrived." In March, the first community center of the expansion was inaugurated in Liberty City, South Florida. The ceremony was simple but moving, with the presence of local authorities, representatives from partner companies, and mainly the community that would be served. Joanna was chosen to lead this first expanded center, and Sarah was moved to see her speak to an audience of more than 200 people. "A year and a half ago, I was a desperate mother who didn't know how to take the next step. Today, I'm here to offer other families the same opportunity I was given, the chance to start over with dignity and support." During the first months of operation, Sarah and Leonardo visited the new center weekly, offering support and guidance. It was gratifying to see how Joanna had adapted the model to her community's specificities, maintaining the essence of the original values but adjusting methods to local needs. One day, during one of these visits, Sarah witnessed a scene that vividly reminded her of the first meeting with Leonardo. An elderly lady was being mistreated by employees of a local business for trying to collect vegetables that had been discarded. "Get out of here, old woman!" shouted the business owner. "This isn't a charity house." Joanna, who had witnessed the scene, approached with the same determination Sarah recognized in herself. "Excuse me," said Joanna to the merchant. "The lady can come with me. We have fresh lunch at the community center right next door, and plenty of vegetables too." The merchant was disconcerted by Joanna's firm but respectful intervention, while the elderly lady gratefully accompanied her. "She learned the lesson well," said Leonardo to Sarah, whispering. "She learned that dignity is non-negotiable," Sarah replied proudly. That afternoon, talking with the elderly lady at the center, Mrs. Rodriguez, 78 years old, who lived alone after her children's death in an accident, Sarah discovered another story of overcoming waiting to happen. "Mrs. Rodriguez," said Sarah, "do you know how to sew?" "Yes, child, I sewed my whole life. I was a seamstress, made party dresses, children's clothes. How about teaching some women here at the center? We can set up a sewing workshop. The women learn a skill, you have company and purpose, and we can still sell the pieces to generate income for the center." Mrs. Rodriguez's eyes lit up for the first time in months. "It would be a dream, child. I have so much to teach." Thus was born another program within the center, the Mrs. Rodriguez Sewing and Embroidery Workshop, which in a few months became not only a source of income for several families, but an intergenerational gathering space where women of different ages shared experiences and knowledge. In May, Sarah received a call that left her extremely moved. It was from a journalist from a national magazine who wanted to do a special story about the work developed by the community centers. "We'd like to tell the complete story," the journalist explained, "from how it all began to the results you're achieving now. Our intention is to inspire other people across the country." Sarah hesitated. She didn't like personal exposure, preferring the focus to always be on community work, not on her or Leonardo. "Can I think about it?" Sarah asked. "Of course, but I can tell you that our preliminary research shows you've created a replicable model of social transformation that's awakening interest even in other countries. It would be a shame not to share this experience." More broadly, that night, Sarah talked with Leonardo about the invitation. "I'm worried the story will focus on us as people, not on the work," she said. "I understand your concern," Leonardo replied, "but think this way. How many people could be inspired to do something similar in their own communities if they read our story? It's just that our story is so personal, talking about my father's humiliation, about our social difference, about how we fell in love. It's exactly because it's personal and real that it can touch other people," Leonardo gently insisted. "How many times have you heard someone say, 'If they could do it, I can too'?" After much thought, Sarah accepted the interview, with the condition that the main focus would always be community impact and the people who had been transformed by the center's work. The report was published 3 months later and had a repercussion that surprised even the magazine's editors. In the 2 weeks following publication, Sarah and Leonardo received more than 500 emails from people across the United States wanting information on how to implement similar projects in their cities. "Look at this," said Leonardo, reading some emails aloud. "A retired doctor from Portland wants to start a community center in the neighborhood where she was born. A group of businessmen from Texas wants to finance 3 centers in rural areas. A teacher from Seattle is organizing mothers to create a community daycare." "It's incredible," said Sarah, also reading the messages. "It seems they just needed an example, proof that it's possible." Decided to take advantage of this interest, Sarah and Leonardo organized the first National Community Leaders Meeting in Miami. The event, held at a convention center donated free by a partner company, brought together more than 1,000 people from all states in the country. During the 3 days of the meeting, practical workshops, inspirational lectures, and networking. Sessions between experienced community leaders and people interested in starting new projects were held. Sarah, who still felt uncomfortable speaking to large audiences, was convinced by Leonardo to give the opening lecture. 2 years ago," she began, with a slightly trembling but strengthening voice, "I was just a daughter who wanted to care for her elderly father with dignity. I didn't have big dreams of changing the world. I didn't see myself as a leader of anything. I just wanted my father to be treated as a human being." The audience was in absolute silence, but I discovered that when we act with love and determination, even the smallest actions can generate waves of transformation that go far beyond what we imagine. Each of you here today proves there's hope, that there are good people willing to make a difference. At the end of the lecture, the ovation was so intense and lasting that Sarah couldn't contain her tears. Several people approached afterward to share their own stories and plans for the future. During the event, Sarah and Leonardo met extraordinary people: a former prisoner who had created a resocialization program in his community, an indigenous woman who developed cultural and environmental preservation projects, a group of young people from the suburbs who used hip-hop as a social education tool. "You know what impresses me most?" said Sarah to Leonardo on the last night of the event. "The diversity of approaches. Each person found a unique way to serve their community, but all with the same spirit of love and transformation." "That's how it should be," Leonardo replied. "There's no single formula for making a difference. Each community has its own needs, its own potentials." The last day of the meeting was dedicated to creating a national network of community centers, a way to keep projects connected, sharing experiences, resources, and mutual support. "We don't want to centralize or control anything," Sarah explained during the closing session. "We just want to facilitate the exchange of ideas and collaboration among all of you." When the event ended, Sarah and Leonardo were exhausted but deeply fulfilled. They had planted seeds that, they knew, would germinate in hundreds of communities across the country. 2 weeks later, news arrived that left them completely surprised. An international foundation had been impressed with the American model and wanted to finance the concept's expansion to other Latin American countries. "It's surreal," said Sarah when they received the invitation for a meeting in Miami with foundation representatives. "We started just wanting to better care for people in our neighborhood, and now it's becoming something international." "Your father always said a good deed is never lost," Leonardo remembered. "I think he was speaking from a much larger perspective than we imagined." The meeting with the International Foundation was revealing. They had studied the community center's model in detail and identified elements they considered innovative and replicable. "What impresses us most," explained the Foundation's representative, an elegant woman of about 50, "is the social sustainability of the model. You don't just meet immediate needs, but empower the communities themselves to become self-sufficient. And the measurable results are impressive," added another representative. "Reduction in domestic violence, increase in children's education, improvement in family income, strengthening of community bonds." The Foundation's proposal was ambitious: implement the model in 50 needy communities distributed across 10 Latin American countries over the next 5 years. Obviously, it would be necessary to adapt the model to the cultural and socio-economic specificities of each country, the representative explained, but the essence of the work would remain the same. Sarah and Leonardo asked for time to think about the proposal. It was an incredible opportunity, but also an enormous responsibility. "Do you think we're prepared for something of this magnitude?" asked Sarah that night. "I think we're never completely prepared for challenges that are really worthwhile," Leonardo replied. "But if we manage to transform our own community, if we manage to train other American leaders, why couldn't we do the same in other countries? It's just that it would require a lot of travel, time away from the children, or take the children with us whenever possible," Leonardo suggested. "Edward and Hope can grow up seeing that there are good people everywhere, that love and solidarity have no borders." After 2 weeks of reflection and consultations with their closest team, Sarah and Leonardo decided to accept the challenge, but with one condition: that the original Mary and Robert Miller Community Center continued operating normally, serving as a base and model for all expansions. In September, they made their first international trip as Foundation consultants. The destination was a needy community on the outskirts of Bogotá, Colombia. The experience was transformative for the whole family. Edward, now 3.5 years old, was fascinated by cultural differences, but moved to realize that Colombian children played the same games he knew. Hope, at 10 months, won over all the Colombians with her smiles and babbling. "Mommy," said Edward during one of the visits to local families, "why don't those children have toys?" "Because their families are going through difficulties, son," Sarah explained. "That's why we're here, to help build a place where they can play, learn, and grow up happy." "Like our center at home?" "Exactly like our center at home." During the 10 days they spent in Colombia, Sarah and Leonardo worked intensively with local community leaders, adapting the American model to Colombian cultural specificities. They discovered that despite language and custom differences, the fundamental challenges were very similar. Families needing support to care for children, elderly needing company and purpose, young people seeking professional training opportunities. It's incredible how basic human needs are universal, Sarah commented to Leonardo during a walk through the community where they were working, and how solutions based on love and respect also work universally, Leonardo added. The Colombian community leader being trained, Maria Elena, a 45-year-old woman with an impressive story of overcoming, made a comment that deeply marked Sarah. "Do you know what's the greatest gift you're giving us? It's not the money to build the center. It's not the equipment or materials. It's the certainty that we're capable of transforming our own reality." On the last day in Colombia, there was a community celebration to mark the official beginning of the project. Hundreds of people gathered in an improvised square with typical music, local food, and much positive expectation. When it was time for Sarah and Leonardo to say goodbye, several people cried. Not because they were leaving, but because they were certain something very special was beginning. "Come back always," said Maria Elena, hugging Sarah. "You'll always have a family here." "And you'll always have a family in the United States," Sarah replied, moved. On the flight back to Miami, while Edward slept on Leonardo's lap and Hope nursed peacefully, Sarah reflected on the extraordinary journey their lives had taken. "Leonardo," she said softly, "do you think my father imagined that his decision to denounce corruption 30 years ago would lead to all this?" "I think your father knew he was planting seeds," Leonardo replied. "Maybe he didn't know exactly what fruits would grow, but he knew that doing the right thing always generates positive consequences, even in the long term." "Sometimes I feel like we live several lives in one life," said Sarah, the daughter who struggled to care for her father, the wife in love, the fulfilled mother, the community leader, the international consultant, as if each phase were preparation for the next. "And there's still a lot ahead," said Leonardo, caressing Sarah's hair. "Our children will grow up seeing that it's possible to make a difference in the world. They'll know different cultures, different languages, but always with the solid foundation of values we're building at home." When they arrived in the United States, they were received at the Mary and Robert Miller Community Center with a surprise party organized by the team and community. There were welcome banners, special food, and much curiosity about the experience in Colombia. "Tell us everything," asked Rosa, who had temporarily assumed general coordination during their absence. Sarah and Leonardo spent hours telling about the people they met, the challenges they faced, the adaptations they made to the model, and mainly about the emotion of seeing that love and solidarity really have no borders. "The most impressive thing," said Leonardo, "was realizing that dreams are the same anywhere in the world. Every mother wants the best for her children. Every elderly person wants to feel useful and respected. Every young person wants opportunities to grow. And that solutions are also similar," Sarah added. "Respect, dignity, opportunity, community. These are ingredients that work in any culture." That night, at home, after putting the children to bed, Sarah and Leonardo sat on the porch to contemplate the stars and process everything they had experienced. "You know," said Sarah, "sometimes I'm afraid all this is too big for us, that we're not capable of honoring the trust so many people are placing in our work." "Then we'll grow along with the challenges," Leonardo replied. "We'll learn, we'll make mistakes, we'll improve. The important thing is not to stop trying." "My father said God never gives us a burden greater than we can carry," Sarah remembered. "But he also said, that sometimes he overestimates our capacity to carry burdens when he knows we have an important purpose ahead. 2 weeks later, while reviewing plans for the next international expansions, Sarah received a call that left her deeply moved. It was from Miguel, Mrs. Garcia's son, who had gotten a job and was now a center volunteer. "Mrs. Sarah," he said with a choked voice, "I wanted you to know. My daughter was born yesterday, Hope Maria, as promised. And you know what was the first thing I thought when I held her in my arms? What was it, Miguel? That she's being born into a world where people like you and Leonardo exist, into a world where there's real hope for everyone, and that when she grows up, I want her to also be a person who makes a difference in others' lives." Sarah hung up the phone with tears in her eyes. There was the greatest reward for all the work they developed, the certainty that they were contributing to a better world, not just for the current generation, but for future ones too. "One day," she said to Leonardo, "our grandchildren will ask about how all this began, and we'll tell them it started with an elderly man looking for food in the trash, and another man who decided to see his dignity instead of his misery, and that it transformed into a network of love that circles the world," Leonardo completed. As the year came to an end, Sarah took a new stock: 5 community centers operating in the United States, 3 being implemented in Colombia and Peru, more than 2,000 families directly served, hundreds of trained community leaders, and an international network of solidarity that continued growing. But the numbers, however impressive, weren't what moved her most. What really mattered were the individual stories. Joanna, who from a desperate mother became a community leader. Mrs. Rodriguez, who found purpose at 78 teaching sewing. Miguel, who left unemployment and depression to become a proud father and dedicated volunteer. Maria. Elena in Colombia, who discovered her capacity for leadership and social transformation. On the last night of the year, gathered again in the courtyard of the Mary and Robert Miller Community Center for the traditional community celebration, Sarah looked around and saw faces that told stories of overcoming, families that had strengthened, children growing in an environment of love and solidarity. "Everyone," she said, asking for attention for the final toast, "when I look at all of you, I don't see people who were helped. I see people who became part of a big family, who help each other, who prove every day that together we are stronger." "And next year," someone shouted from the crowd. "Next year, we'll continue dreaming big and acting with love," Sarah replied. "We'll take our message to more places. We'll touch more lives. We'll prove that there's no impossible dream when you have determination and purpose." When the fireworks began to light up the sky, Sarah was exactly where she wanted to be, surrounded by the family she had chosen and the family she had built, knowing she had honored her father's memory in the best possible way, and confident that the future held even more opportunities to make a difference in the world. "Dad," she murmured, looking at the stars shining between the fireworks, "thank you for teaching me that dignity is non-negotiable and that true love transforms everything. Your legacy is alive and will continue to live through every life we touch." And so, with a heart full of gratitude and eyes fixed on the future, Sarah and Leonardo prepared to face another year of challenges, achievements, and mainly love shared with the world. And you, do you believe that love can really transform lives? That all people deserve a second chance to be happy? This story has come to an end, but the message continues to live in each of us. If this story touched your heart, leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more stories that speak directly to the soul. Comment below which city you're watching from and tell us if you've lived or know any story similar to this one. Suggestions for new stories are always welcome. We want to continue bringing you narratives that inspire, move, and show that true love still exists in this world. Thank you for following Sarah and Leonardo's journey. Until the next story.